Es wird immer auf die Schwächsten der Gesellschaft, auf dessen Rücken ausgetragen. Und das sind seit jeher die Familien.
So welcome to our 88th Quality of Childhood session this morning, on this very important theme of family support. We're all aware that many families are under severe stress at the moment. A combination of events and economics and climate change and wars. We know that many families are suffering more and more and finding it very difficult to come through in a healthy and flourishing way, and will need even more support in the future. We also know that if they aren't given the support when the children are young, this has lasting consequences for the future of our societies. To work with this, it's a matter of compassion, of fellow feeling for others, that we share this world together and have a mutual responsibility towards each other, and everybody else's well-being is our own well-being. But at the same time as the compassion, we need clarity. We need to know where we stand. And it's clear from the work that EuroFamNet have been doing, looking into family support across the nations of the European Union, there's a lot that is not known. And so they put a great deal of work and effort into seeing what the policies are in different countries and how they relate and what would be best practice among them for the future. This is, I think, an extraordinary achievement, that they work with so many researchers to bring together a coherent picture that can be used in the future in developing the policies, both for civil society and for the political world, to help strengthen family life, that it is healthy for all concerned. So I think when we listen to that later today, what also comes out clearly is that it needs new concepts, new ways of thinking. The ways of thinking of the past, as we've seen in many areas of life, no longer are relevant. Things have to change. We've seen this in the last few COCs again and again. What we've been experienced in the last 5-6 years has changed the world we live in, and it's still changing quite rapidly. And so new ideas, new concepts, new clarity have to be striven for at every opportunity, because nothing stays the same. Having been involved in EuroFamNet, I'm full of admiration in the way it's been held together, and the clarity of purpose, and the clarity with which all these different aspects have been brought together and crystallized and presented in a way that could bring about change if the will was there. So thank you for attending today, and I'll pass the word to Mr. Geuking, our patron.
Jetzt, ja, das Mikrofon funktioniert. Ja, ich begrüße Sie recht herzlich heute Morgen. Ich finde wunderbar, dass wir heute diese Veranstaltung hier absolvieren und dass ich so viele Gäste begrüßen darf. Ich möchte die Verdolmetschung noch bitten, etwas lauter zu reden, weil es kommt hier leider nichts an, also so gut wie nichts an. Das muss ein wenig lauter. Ja, ich begrüße auch hier oben meine Gäste. Ich erspare mir jetzt namentlich, Sie sehen es und Sie haben es in der Einladung gelesen, wer hier ist. Ich möchte jetzt nicht jeden Einzelnen vorstellen, weil dann haben wir schon die meiste Zeit rum. Gut, also wir haben die Problematiken der Familienunterstützung, dass die anhand von Covid-19 und auch durch den Ukraine-Krieg und durch die Inflation, die wir haben und weitestgehend in den Ländern weggebrochen ist, dass sie nicht mehr dort wirken kann oder ankommt, wo sie hingehört, nämlich bei den Familien und bei den Kindern. Die Familien sind die Leidtragenden dieser ganzen Krisen, die wir jetzt erlebt haben und weiter durcherleben werden und durcherleben zurzeit. Und es wird immer auf die Schwächsten der Gesellschaft, auf dessen Rücken ausgetragen. Und das sind seit jeher die Familien, wo die Eltern seit Jahrzehnten um ihre Lebensleistung betrogen werden, wir haben nächstes Jahr wieder Europawahlen, wo in Wahlzeiten, Sie werden es erleben, sobald sich das zuspitzt, ein halbes Jahr vorher, werden alle Parteien sich wieder die Familien auf die Fahnen schreiben. Alle Parteien werden große Versprechungen machen. Alle Parteien werden mit pfiffigen Ideen um die Gegend kommen. Nach dem Wahltag will es keiner mehr gewesen sein und es gerät alles wieder in Vergessenheit. Und da ist es ganz wichtig, dass es Sozialpolitiker gibt, wie bei uns aus der Familienpartei Deutschlands, die immer wieder den Daumen in die Wunde legen und immer wieder das einfordern, was versprochen worden ist. Versprochen wird schnell etwas, aber diese Versprechen werden noch alle gebrochen. Das hat die Vergangenheit gezeigt, das haben die letzten 50 Jahre gezeigt. Wo stehen die Familien heute? In vielen Ländern reicht es am 15. des Monats vorne und hinten nicht mehr. Die Familien können nicht mehr über die Runden kommen und dabei sind sie doch der Baustein unserer Gesellschaft. Sie sind der Grundstein unserer Gesellschaft, die den Fortbestand unserer Gesellschaft absichert. Und da sind wir alle in der Pflicht, hier entsprechend unterstützend einzugreifen. Und jetzt ist es 27 EU-Länder. In jedem Land ist es völlig unterschiedlich. Aber selbst in so reichen Ländern wie Deutschland, wo ich herkomme, haben wir mittlerweile eine Armutsquote von 30% der Kinder. Das dürfen wir nicht vergessen. Das sind die inoffiziellen Zahlen. 30% der Kinder leben unter der Armutsgrenze. Das heißt, die Eltern haben weniger als 60% des Medianeinkommens zur Verfügung. Das ist in Deutschland als arm definiert. Und wenn man sich das anschaut, was will man dann in den ärmeren Ländern wie Bulgarien, Rumänien, Ungarn erwarten? Da ist die Armut noch größer. Neulich hat mir eine EVP-Kollegin gesagt, sie war erstmalig in einem Roma-Lager in Tschechien und sagte, sie hat gesehen, dass dort ein Säugling verhungert. Mitten in Europa verhungert ein Kind. Unglaublich. Sie war völlig geschockt. Sie sitzt schon seit über 20 Jahren hier im Parlament und jetzt ist es ihr bewusst geworden, wie es tatsächlich um die Familien steht. Und natürlich ist es bei den Roma noch die Schwächsten der Schwachen überhaupt. Und sie hat es live erlebt, dass da ein Kind am Verhungern war, ein Säugling. Und unglaublich. Aber da kann man mal sehen, wie weltfremd auch viele Politiker sind. Wie blauäugig die letzten 20 Jahre durch die Welt gelaufen sind. Und da kann man auch mal sehen, was in den letzten 20 Jahren an Familienversprechungen bei jeder Wahl erfolgt ist. Und was dann im Endeffekt bei rumgekommen ist, nämlich nichts. Das Einzige, was bei rumgekommen ist, nach dem Motto, um Gottes Willen, ihr könnt doch keine Kinder haben, Kinder kosten Geld. Kinder ist das Armutsrisiko Nummer 1 in unserer Gesellschaft, in ganz Europa. Die Altersarmut ist vorprogrammiert, wenn ihr Kinder habt. Das sind die Tatsachen und das ist so, wie sich es gegenwärtig darstellt. Und das ist eine Schande im 21. Jahrhundert. Wir leben im 21. Jahrhundert, wir leben in einer Zeit, die noch nie mit so viel Reichtum gesegnet war, im Grunde genommen wie heute. Nur die Umverteilung stimmt nicht. Bei den unten, bei den Schwächsten, bei den Kindern unserer Gesellschaft kommt halt nichts an. Und jetzt stellt sich hier die Frage heute, Familienunterstützung, eine hochwertige Familienunterstützung, das ist ein Recht für alle Kinder. Aber wie führen wir dieses Recht überhaupt ein? Wer fordert es ein? Ich denke mir, so wie wir alle hier sitzen, sind wir alle daran interessiert, dass es eingefordert wird. Und wir fordern es tagtäglich ein. Aber wer führt es ein? Und das ist die große Frage. Und hier ist die EU, Europa natürlich ganz besonders gefordert. Wir versuchen, Sie glauben gar nicht, wie schwer es ist, alleine als Familienpolitiker, Familienpartei Deutschlands hier in den Berichten nur das Wort Familie reinzubringen. Das wird komplett boykottiert und blockiert. Man möchte das Wort gar nicht in die Köpfe der Menschen drin haben, sondern es wird ersetzt mit Lebensgemeinschaften, Hausgemeinschaften. Das Wort Familie wird peinlichst vermieden. Und wir haben da schon ganze Kämpfe ausgefochten, wo wir darauf bestehen mussten und sagen mussten, nein, dann werden wir diesen Bericht ablehnen, wenn das nicht so definiert ist, was es ist, nämlich Familie. Und wir haben es so definiert, dass wir sagen, Familie ist überall da, wo wir ein Kind finden. Und ich will es mal ganz deutlich machen, wir machen das auch nicht am Alter fest. Wenn meine Eltern noch leben würden und ich würde einer meiner Eltern zu mir nehmen, weil sie, was weiß ich, Hilfe bedürfen oder weil wir einfach zusammenleben wollen, dann sind wir wieder Familie. Ich bin das Kind meiner Eltern. Das ist unabhängig vom Alter definiert. Spielt keine Rolle, wie alt ich bin. Ich bleibe das Kind meiner Eltern und bin das Kind meiner Eltern. Und sobald wir zusammenleben, ist es natürlich Familie. Und das ist der Familienbegriff. Also wir müssen auch aus den Köpfen der Bevölkerung herausbekommen, Familie ist immer ganz süß, zwei ganz süße kleine Kinder und zwei hervorragende Eltern und allen geht's gut und alle glücklich und harmonisch. Das ist nicht die Familie im 21. Jahrhundert. Die Familie im 21. Jahrhundert ist durchaus glücklich, weil sie sich haben, aber es ist auch harmonisch wahrscheinlich, aber es ist wenig wirtschaftlich erträglich. Und wie ich vorhin schon gesagt habe, bei den meisten Familien ist am 15. des Monats Ende mit den Gehältern, mit den Geldern. Und dann ist es nur noch ein Überleben bis Ende des Monats. Und die Leidtragenden sind die Kinder. Wie viele Kinder in Europa gehen täglich hungrig zur Schule? Wie viele Kinder in Europa werden täglich in den Kindergärten, Schulen und so weiter nicht verpflegt, weil sie kein Verpflegungsgeld mitbekommen, weil die Eltern es gar nicht mehr haben? Und das sind Sachen, wo wir als Politiker, da nehme ich mich gar nicht aus, Schuld dran haben, an diesem Zustand, den wir jetzt in Europa haben. Und dieser Zustand hat sich, wie mein Vorredner schon sagte, durch Covid-19, durch die Kriege in der Ukraine, durch die Inflation noch weiter verschärft und so dramatisch verschärft, dass wir dringend sofort handeln müssen. Und ob Sie es glauben oder nicht, hier im Europaparlament reden Sie sich den Mund fusselig. Wir haben für alles um Gott und der Welt Geld, nur nicht für die Familien, nur nicht für die Schwächsten der Schwachen. Ich versuche, seitdem ich hier bin, seit 2019, das Kinderkostengeld einzuführen. Wir waren so kurz davor, dass es eingeführt wird. Und dann haben sich, obwohl zugesagt worden ist, von den Linken, von den Grünen, von der S&D, wurde zugesagt, dazu zu stimmen, haben sich enthalten am Tag der Plenarsitzung. Im Ausschuss mit breiter Mehrheit dafür gestimmt, am Plenarsitzung 324, 25 Enthaltungen wegen dem Kinderkostengeld. Verbal wollte man es haben. 50 Euro, 25 Euro direkt jedes Kind, dessen Eltern weniger als das Medianeinkommen in den Ländern bekommen und 25 Euro in die Kommunen zur Schaffung Familienbegleitung, Familienbegleiterinnen oder Begleiter, um in den Kommunen Europa präsent zu machen und den Familien direkt zu helfen. Das war das Kinderkostengeld oder das ist das Kinderkostengeld und so war ich hier sitze, ich werde alles daran setzen, dass wir es auch umsetzen. Allerdings der erste Versuch in meinem Bericht ist gescheitert, weil sich 25 Abgeordnete enthalten haben. Das ist schon symbolisch dafür, welchen Stellenwert Familien und Kinder in unserer Gesellschaft haben. Da enthält man sich. Man stimmt natürlich dafür, dass die Gastronomie, dass das Bier, dass das alles reduziert wird, dass das bezuschusst wird. Da stimmt man dafür. 7%, bei uns in Deutschland 7% Steuerersparnis auf Printmedien, wie zum Beispiel, seien Sie mir nicht böse, ich spreche es mal aus, das ganz böse Wort, wie zum Beispiel ein Pornoheft. Das ist steuerlich begünstigt. Aber gehen Sie mal die Kinderpampers kaufen, gehen Sie mal die Kindernahrung kaufen, da sind die vollen Steuern drauf. Das ist Wertigkeit in unserer Gesellschaft. Und dann reden die Politiker von, wir müssen die Familien stärken und wir brauchen jetzt in Deutschland ganz aktuell, wir brauchen jetzt einen Kinderbetrag, wir wollen also Kindergeld und so weiter zusammenziehen zu einem Kinderkostenbeitrag. Da hat man uns das Kinderkostengeld ein bisschen geklaut, die nennt sich jetzt Kinderkostenbeitrag. Da gehen alle Alarmglocken bei mir an. Glauben Sie mal nicht, dass da mehr für die Familien übrig bleibt. Da wird höchstens noch was gestrichen. So sieht es aus unterm Strich. Die Leistungen werden zusammengefügt und dann wird entsprechende Beschränkung gemacht. Zum Beispiel ist es ja jetzt schon so, auch in Deutschland, Kindergeld wird zum Beispiel auf Hartz IV nicht angerechnet oder auf das Bürgergeld. Oder voll angerechnet, muss ich sagen, auf das Bürgergeld. Alles zu leidtragenden Familien, diese Politik. Aber 100 Milliarden für das Militär, das haben wir in Deutschland. Und wie gesagt, viele kommen hier aus anderen Ländern. Es sieht bei Ihnen in den Ländern, wenn man dahinter guckt, nicht anders aus. Das versichere ich Ihnen. Und da sind wir halt gefordert. Wir selber und mein Büro arbeitet gerade an einem Projekt, ganz aktuell, seit gestern kann ich sagen, an einem Projekt, was gestern erst reingekommen ist. Bis Ende dieses Monats müssen wir das vorlegen, wo wir entsprechend einreichen werden, dass wir europaweit die Familien entsprechend anamnestisch hinterfragen müssen, wie es den Familien tatsächlich geht und welche Konzepte es geben kann, zukünftig für Europa die Familien finanziell zu stärken. Ich bin darauf gespannt, ob dieses Pilotprojekt durchkommt oder ob auch dieses wieder abgelehnt wird. Wahrscheinlich wird es hingeschleppt bis zu den Wahlen und nach den Wahlen wird es abgelehnt. Das weiß ich jetzt schon oder vermute ich jetzt schon. Und das ist der tatsächliche Zustand, den wir in der Politik hier in Europa haben. Und das ist der tatsächliche Zustand, welche Wertigkeit Familie und Kinder Kinder, unser aller Zukunft, welche Wertigkeit die in der Politik hat, nämlich keine. Und deswegen ist es so wichtig, dass wir diese Veranstaltung machen. Deswegen ist es so wichtig, dass wir so hochkarätige Rednerinnen und Redner hier haben, die auch mal aus ihrem Sektor berichten, wie es tatsächlich ist und was wir machen müssen. Und wie bekommen wir hochwertige Familienunterstützung in ganz Europa? Wie schaffen wir das? Wie können wir andere überzeugen? Selbst in meiner eigenen Fraktion der EVP, Sie glauben gar nicht, wie viel Überzeugungsarbeit ich leisten muss, vor allen Dingen bei den christdemokratischen Politikern. Wie gesagt, in den Wahlkampfzeiten reden alle gerne davon und schmücken sich auch alle gerne mit Familien und mit Kindern und Küsschen hier und Küsschen da. Und nach den Wahlkampfzeiten will es wieder keiner gewesen sein. Ja, wir setzen ganz viel Gelder frei, anhand der Krisen zu bewältigen. Sie erleben es tagtäglich, hören Sie es in den Medien, was für Wirtschaftsprogramme wir auferlegen, was für Programme wir auferlegen, wie viel Gelder wir notwendigerweise, ich will es gar nicht kleinreden, notwendigerweise auch benötigen, um den Krieg in der Ukraine einzudämmen, dass er sich nicht ausweitet. Die Diplomatie versagt leider auf diesen Sektor zurzeit. Da hatte ich gestern noch entsprechend ausgeführt in unserer Fraktion. Und wir erleben, dass dann für alles Geld da ist, nur nicht für die Familienunterstützung. Und die ist so wichtig, denn wenn wir die jetzt nicht machen, die Familienunterstützung, dann wird unsere Gesellschaft, und sie krankt jetzt schon, schauen sich den demografischen Wandel an, dann wird unsere Gesellschaft nicht nur kalt und verrohen, sondern unsere Gesellschaft hat keine Zukunft mehr. Das muss man so deutlich sagen. Also unsere Gesellschaft, davon meine ich jetzt unsere europäische Gesellschaft. Wir haben keine Zukunft mehr, wenn wir die Familienbild aufgeben und wenn wir die Kinder, das Recht der Kinder auf Familienunterstützung weiterhin so reglementieren, wie wir es zurzeit machen. Ja, ich freue mich auf die Diskussion. Ich glaube, als Einführung habe ich genug gesagt. Ich sehe es natürlich aus der Sicht eines Sozialpolitikers, verzeihen Sie mir, und ich sehe es natürlich auch aus der Sicht des Bundesvorsitzenden der Familienpartei Deutschlands. Und ich sehe es nicht als ein erzkonservativer Wirtschaftspolitiker, sondern wirklich als ein Sozialpolitiker. Und mir liegen halt die Familien und die Kinder, ich habe selber 3 Kinder, sehr am Herzen. Ja, und jetzt eröffne ich unsere Diskussion. Und ich übergebe Ihnen wieder das Wort zur Leitung und sage vielen herzlichen Dank auch an die Organisatoren hier, an die Verdolmetschung herzlichen Dank und natürlich hier an Esther, meine Mitarbeiterin, die alles so wunderbar mit Frau Piccolo organisiert hat. Vielen Dank, Frau Piccolo, auch. Und dass dieser Vormittag hier so stattfinden kann. Und ich begrüße, habe ich ganz vergessen, auch die Teilnehmer, die online zugeschaltet sind. Wir haben mehrere Teilnehmer, wie ich sehe, die online zugeschaltet sind und diese Diskussion verfolgen aus mehreren Ländern. Darüber freue ich mich sehr. Und auch Sie herzlich willkommen an den Computern zu Hause. Und jetzt übergebe ich auch also wirklich das Wort. Dankeschön.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geuking, for those passionate words, with the sincerity with which you uttered them, which really supports the work that we've been doing in Eurofamnet. So we pass over to Lucia and John. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me say that I couldn't imagine a better way to celebrate the post-International Day of Women. So happy to be here. And let me start saying thank you to Christopher Clowder and Alliance for Childhood for the invitation to be here. And thank you also to the MdEP Helmut Geuking for this kind hosting and this passionate, as Christopher said, introduction, because we wanted to establish the rationale to be here talking about families. And I think that you covered that so nicely and so passionately. So thank you for the commitment on this regard. I would also start saying thank you to our colleague Joanna Schema and Makes Mother Matters for the post-talk that they are organizing in collaboration with Daniel Croft from Learning Foundation. So thank you for that support, and for Alliance for Childhood, their team, and Chiara Piccolo for the wonderful organization. So it's wonderful to be here talking about quality family support. We know that you have busy agendas, and we would also to start saying that it's very good news for us that you are deciding to put in your agenda children and families' rights, and to spend some time this morning talking about quality family support delivery. And the main characters of the morning are our colleagues, Professor Ozdemir and Professor Rodrigo. So Professor Canavan and myself, as chair and vice chair of Eurofamnet, what we will do is just a brief introduction to tell you a little bit about who we are, what is the way we are working, and what our priorities. We would like to establish the rationale about why being here, talking at the European Parliament about family support, and we hope that this is helpful in order to smoothly move to or introduce our next speakers. So now I will give the floor to my colleague.
So, good morning, everybody. And again, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to be with us. And I won't reiterate the thanks, but just to say thanks to all colleagues. You will realise and you will all understand as practitioners, as leaders in this field, that there is a commitment to children's rights and well-being, and it's well established throughout Europe. And I suppose we have different mechanisms through which that's represented and different regulations and different policies and practices, and kind of coming from the convention, UN Convention in the 90s right the way through, and latterly, and colleagues around the room have been key in driving forward children's rights agenda, we could say. We also know that it's the case that in order for children's rights to be realised, that we need to support parents and we need to support families, and that's really, really key. So I suppose that's one of the things that comes from our perspective, that we need to think about children's rights in relation to parents. But we also know, and within the Child Guarantee most recently, that emphasis on the importance of quality services coming from, supported by the European Social Network and others. So these are important factors and matters that drive us, if you want, in our thinking. I suppose the gap is there some sort of a connection that brings all of these things together? And that's what we are about in our work. And we look at this from a family support point of view. We are looking at, if you want, the local, the national and the European level through this. But critically, and this is very important, and perhaps our slide might be a little bit too small for you to read there, but really what we're talking about is this commitment to integrating evidence, practice and policy. And that if we have policy on its own or in connection with some of those things, we're not there. If we have practice and policy but maybe not evidence, we're not there. If we have evidence and practice but not policy, we're not there. So really our commitment as a network is really to bring together into dialogue these three things: policy, practice and evidence. And if we want, really remembering that we are about, in our work, thinking about children's rights ultimately. So what happened was we created the European Family Support Network a number of years ago, and through this we were supported as a cost action. And as a consequence of the support from cost, we are now at a stage where we have a significant membership. As you can see, the numbers: 173 participants in 35 countries, and we have 12 European organisations. And that's really, really important, just to emphasise the extent to which family support is something that actually resonates across all of these countries in the way that we describe it, which is family support ultimately for children's rights. Ultimately, we want to achieve children's rights and families' well-being, and the cost action reflects and supports our desire for partnership between practitioners, policymakers and academics in bringing forward the right evidence at the right time in the right way to support activity. So how do we do our work? Well, we build our work, if you want, around three main areas. We are, first of all, starting with the idea of, well, if we have an idea of family support, what would that look like at a European level? Can you create a single conceptual framework for family support? And that's one of the work packages that we have, if you want, our starting work package, in fact. And that has produced some important work, which Lucia will refer to in a moment. But we are also really, really interested in I suppose, the idea of family support in practice, looking at things like quality standards, looking at things like programme effectiveness, looking at things like quality standards, effectiveness and evaluation. How do we evaluate? How do we know is this working? So that's really, really been driven by significant colleagues. Some of whom are in the room, and Maria Jose and Metin will be talking about some of that. And then we are interested in the skills piece. What do people do who go into families' houses, who go into parents' homes and children's homes? How do they do their work? What kind of skills do they need? And we are advancing work on that at the moment. So you will see in the middle of the slide here, what we've got is our kind of methodology. And our methodology is really to start from the bottom. What's going on in terms of that interface at that individual family level? We have what we call a dialogical style. We are interested in conversations. We are not interested in experts in each field. We are interested in open agendas and discussing and sharing and moving things forward. And we are interested in doing this in a way that reflects both national level, local level, regional level, and European level, and trying to achieve that. And in a way, today is about that to a degree, that we are here and having this opportunity, and thanks to colleagues for bringing us to this point. So that, I hope, gives a little bit of context for the work of the action. So I'll hand you over to Lucia now.
What you can see now in the slide is a really brief summary of part of this conceptualization on family support that we have been working on in Europaparlament. And I want to say that this is work for more than 3 years, for a large group of more than 50 people working on this conceptual umbrella. And I want to explicitly thank to Professor Carmel Devaney and colleagues Harriet Churchill and Angela Vella for coordinating this work. And what we have get is an in-depth and complex comprehension about what family support means. And this comes from a very systematic work that starts from systematic review of literature, also a review of policy regulations at European level, and national studies about what are the current developments and provisions in family support in 27 countries. So what I wanted to emphasize is that this is very systematic and in-deep work. And what it's telling us is that when we talk about supporting families, we have to consider these 3 levels that you have on the slide. So we have to consider the statutory frameworks and reforms for family support. We have to consider services and support that are addressed to families, and also what's going on in practice, what's going on with frontline practitioners. And these are distinct aspects, but what we have learned in Europaparlament is that there is a large fragmentation on those, and there is need for more integration. So we understand that any reform in family support has to consider these 3 elements together. And you can see in the left side that yellow line that is reminding and is reflecting something, an ethos that is cross-sectional, that is the participatory approach. So we have to be together, as Professor Kahneman introduced, policymakers, practitioners, NGOs, and for sure the voice of children and families on this, if we want to provide solutions that are tailored to their needs and that also that want to promote their agency. So we understand that we have to start from that conceptual framework in order to work about how to make this family support from quality. So how are we doing this well, let's say? And we want on that regard to recognize the diverse, as MdEP already stated, that we are not talking about a single form of family. We have in Europe families that are diverse in forms, in structures, in cultural heritage, and in living conditions. So that requires a culturally sensitive solutions. We need a culturally sensitive approach from family support, and what we have learned from research is that family support provision is diverse to respond to those needs. So there is variability in terms of the delivering, the funding, frameworks, and so on. And that's a strength for the way that we are formulating support, but we have also to make a call about a minimum quality standards that we need to meet in order to provide that enough quality support. And we have to be sure that we are guaranteeing that those quality standards are implemented. This call for quality support provision is fully aligned with the recent European Commission call to increase quality assurance processes in social and care services, and it's also fundamental to the EU values like social justice and equity. And for sure, we are referring to a citizens' rights issue that has not been fully covered, as has been stated already in the table, or at least there is room for improvement. So that's not very innovative if we say that we need quality standards, that we need to implement those. But the challenge is, what are those quality standards? Which are the standards that we should be focusing on? And Professor Metin Özdemir, in the framework of a large package coordinated by Professor Sonia Birne and Nina Peknik, as I said, Metin Özdemir has been coordinating this work, so he will talk more about what are those standards that we should be taking into account in family support programming. And the other challenge is, how are we implementing those standards? How do we implement evidence-based practices? So this is where the evidence piece come into play. And before moving to the presentations on those regard, we wanted to share with you this, what we think is a sophisticated way to understand evidence-based practices in family support, and that is very relevant to understand what is coming next. So when we talk about evidence-based practices in general, we refer to the idea of providing the best solutions according to practitioners' skills and considering clients' preferences. When we talk about this, particularly in family support, we have to consider that we are talking about a workforce that is multidiscipline, is multi-sector, and works collaboratively. So that makes a difference when we think about practice in family support. And we think that there is need for an interactive dialogue between research and practice. So the evidence has to come from practice, from that bottom-up process, and go back to practice and provide solutions that are useful, that are valid for each different context. And what probably is the most important for us is that when we talk about our clients, as has been already said on the table, we are talking about children and families. So this is not a preference issue anymore, but this is a right question. So we are talking about what children and families deserve, because they are right owners and they are EU citizens that deserve that the solutions we are providing are really and are actually making possible that those rights are achieved. So that means that there is need for a direct relationship between results and rights. That also means that we need these culturally informed solutions, and also we need to hear, and I'm not, and I want to repeat again, so it's not waste of time saying that we have to hear and start from the voices and the perspectives of children and families on this. So I hope that this morning we have the opportunity to extend our thinking about this, and I want to thank our colleagues, Professor Özdemir and Rodrigo, that will follow our discussion and our thinking on this. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much. So,
Thank you.
He's coming first.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And I would like to give my special thanks first to Lucia and Jandis for putting together this very large group of Eurofemnet family, because I'm not able to recognize any such organization at the European level or in North America. There are very large research organizations at the local and the national level, but this is very unique. I think it was a great pleasure for me to be part of this work, this environment, and also lead the quality standards development work. And also very special thanks to all the organizers and the audience here today. So the work that I'm going to try to present, is a very technical work in the background, but our goal from the beginning was to develop an understandable, accessible language so that we could promote communication among different groups of people who are into family support provisions at different levels, at in different purposes. So there are so many people involved in this process. I cannot list them all, but I'm really grateful for being part of this group. So one of the first challenge that we have encountered when we start developing the quality standards was that the evidence-based programs, the type of the programs that we wanted to promote in this initiative was managed by different groups of people. So the life cycle of evidence-based programs is departmentalized into different sections. So the programs are developed, formulated by groups of practitioners or researchers, and then it's implemented mostly by the practitioners, evaluated by researchers, and also decision makers are involved in whether to fund these programs, continue these programs, and disseminate at a larger level. So all these groups are coming from different backgrounds, different traditions, and they use different sets of languages. And the quality standards that are already available in different parts of the prevention field has been communicating to most of the time researchers or practitioners, but there was none available trying to speak about the common goals, set rules, or recommendations to different parties. And our intention was to develop quality standards that will be accessible to all different main parties that are involved in this process. And most of the quality standards we have identified has been focusing on the implementation process and the evaluation process primarily. And they have been ignoring the other sections of the very important process of quality evidence-based program provisions. And the Eurofem quality standards is aiming to reach out a much larger focus in order to improve the communication between different parties responsible for different stages of this overall life cycle. We emphasized all these stages in the quality standards development. So this is one of the most important, unique aspects of the quality standards that we are trying to propose today. And also we have used a very systematic approach. In most cases, the quality standards that are available are promoted by either research organizations, professional organizations, or local governments in order to set certain types of rules to help with the decision-making process. So we started from there. In order to understand what's available, we did a massive search of all the quality standards that are available in Europe and North America and elsewhere in the world. And the quality standards that we were able to identify were reviewed extensively in order to understand the method of development of the content and the consistency and the comprehensiveness of the content. So we were able to identify the quality standards that were in specific fields, and most of the time the most developed quality standards available in the field were focusing on drug and substance abuse prevention programs. And there were also some available standards for child abuse and neglect prevention. So our focus is about family support provision. So our goal in our work is to develop the standards that are available and accessible to a larger group of people dealing with different types of family support provisions, not only specific to evidence-based programs, but any kind of family support programs dealing with a very wide variety of programs. So obviously these available quality standards were not sufficient for developing our own work. And then we looked into the academic publications. The massive amount of research has been reviewed, and we try to identify the evidence based on solid research that is suggesting what is effective and what makes family support programs of different kinds effective when they are implemented in different contexts for different groups in different cultural environments. And we try to identify the common themes around these studies. And then the third step was discussing the findings that we have gathered from the established quality standards and academic work with our colleagues. So both researchers, practitioners, methodologists were involved in this process. And this process is still going on, even though we started in 2019. So this is not a very short-term endeavor that we are engaged in. So by the end of the term, hopefully we are going to be finalizing our quality standards, and it will be at the level that we can start sharing with a wider group of colleagues, so that as we can promote further discussion on finalizing this quality standards document. So it has been a long process and very intensive process. And there are a lot of details of our quality standards, but I'm not going to get into all these details because it is sometimes very technical. What I would like to emphasize is the unique idea that we wanted to develop in our quality standards. We wanted to emphasize certain fundamental principles in developing our quality standards that would set certain standards for all different stages of family support provisions. So the fundamental principles that we identified, 5 of them, so it could be more or less, but we want to keep as parsimonious as possible. So these 5 were considered as inclusive as we need. And they are targeting the specific quality standards relevant to the program formulation, program delivery, evaluation, and the dissemination of the programs. So these 5 fundamental principles are at the very core of all our work. So anything that we propose for program development, high quality program development, these 5 fundamental principles are making contributions, substantial contribution to the quality standards relevant to program formulation, and the same applies to delivery, implementation work, evaluation, and the dissemination. So they are the central points. So what we understand very briefly about these 5 fundamental principles. The first one is responsiveness. So we consider that quality family support programs should be responsive to the needs of the target groups. And nowadays in Europe, the families and children are coming from very diverse backgrounds, and they have different needs. So there are different layers of these diversity in their background. There are cultural differences, socioeconomic differences, and many others that we cannot count. So the high quality family support program is needed to be responsive to the needs of the target group, specific to their unique backgrounds. And our second fundamental principle is the feasibility. Sometimes there is a big dilemma between researchers and practitioners in terms of what is the best approach to provide provisions to families. And sometimes as researchers, and myself as a researcher also, we think about complexities and we believe that complexities are better. But at the same time in the practice, complex things are not really feasible. Complexities sometimes are killing the very well-intended, well-developed programs very easily in the field, as you may recognize, and I see some smiling faces. I think we share the same idea. So feasibility is one of the important quality, basic principle that sets forth the quality standards in our work. The work needs to be feasible in terms of considering the specific contextual characteristics that we are going to provide these family support programs. And another important aspect, the fundamental principle, is ethicality. So everything has to be following the professional, local, and national level guidelines. So there are some differences between different parts of the world in terms of how ethics are considered. Professional ethics is sometimes different than the practices, and there are also laws at the local and the national level, and also at the European level. So what we are proposing is that we need to have a more comprehensive approach when we consider ethics. It needs to be taking into account both the professional ethics. Sometimes it's a bit further away from the law, so it's more progressive. And also we need to consider the new developments and legal rules and regulations in our family support provisions. And also the next one is reflectiveness. So a family support program should reflect the views, opinions, and the values and the background of the target groups. And we need to include in the process of program development, implementation, evaluation, the target group. So this is a very common argument. In most of the cases, we adapt this idea, But including the target group in the process of these stages does not really mean that we are reflecting their unique characteristics in the process. Sometimes inclusion is a more of a static approach that we place people in a group of work, but they are not, their needs and their wishes, their opinions, their backgrounds are not really reflected strongly in the work that we are doing. So we propose that high quality family support programs should be reflecting the characteristics of the unique groups, their views and the values. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to reach out and maximize the benefits for them. And of course, the last but not the least important issue is the sustainability. In many cases, the evidence-based programs are developed by researchers and based on funding from national or local agencies, and there's a time limits for provisions of the services. In some good cases, we are able to integrate these operations into the systems for certain durations, but most of the time, sustainability is very much dependent on the local and the national funding availability and the resources. So how can we resolve this issue? That's one of the best ways to resolve this issue, to start thinking about from the very beginning, this when we are developing the program in a specific context, how we can make sure that this program is going to be sustainable rather than considering sustainability as the last stage. So sustainability is, because of that reason, is another important aspect of the quality standards we are developing here. So overall, we are aiming to develop a quality standards document that we are going to propose soon as comprehensive and inclusive, easy to communicate, practical, and unifying. So the idea that we are aiming for here is to achieve certain goals so that we can use these quality standards not only for a certain group of people for specific purposes, but to unify, develop a language, a common language between program developers, practitioners, researchers, and decision makers so that we can take the work that we are engaged in to next level. And if you ask me about this, where children and families are in this process. So all these fundamental principles, accomplishment of these fundamental principles in practice for the specific stages or program stages requires inclusion of the target group. So basically children and the families in the process. So the program development, implementation process, evaluation, and dissemination, they all require their inclusion, active engagement in the process so that we can maximize the intake, this reception, and also the benefits for these groups. So this is our overall structure, and as I mentioned, our work is continuing, and hopefully Maria Jose is going to give us some ideas about where we can take this work to the next level by reviewing the implementation in the European context. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I'm happy to be here and to be a presenter in these sessions. And I also express first time my gratitude to Lucia and to John for steering so well this project, that is a complex project involving so many countries, but combining efficiency, the sharing of knowledge and expertise. I praise very much that, but also friendship. And also the cultural meeting of different points of view, different standards in our respective countries. And so going so smoothly into the task that we are fulfilling quite well until now. Also, thanks to the organizers for making possible these wonderful sessions and getting the audience in front of us. Well, my task is specifically going a step towards the implementing evidence-based. Sorry, we have to change the presentation. Sorry. Yes, here. Thank you. So we have to move a step forwards towards implementing evidence-based practices. I would say EVP in short, as a model for professional practice. So it's not the same to have the standards there. We have a clear-cut way, clear-cut thinking about which are the standards, but then how to move into the practical field, how to get into the services, into the professionals' minds, into all the system that is delivering all of this. So, and I will make a showcase with the comparative survey study that we have done with 20 countries that are involved in the Eurofamnet. And in doing so, I would like to attract the attention into the current situation we have now in Europe. First, we have to take into account current situation. I can do it. Well, no, it's not working. Oh, yes, sorry. I have to go a step before. So first, we have to take into account that the European policy, I think, is well aware of the importance of adopting EBP. I think finally we have a lot of examples on this, but they think that it's very good for investment. Clearly, it's good for informed decision making, but also it's good for transferability of best practices, which is very good. But there is not much information. There's little information, I can tell you, about the actual incorporation of EBP adoptions in the countries. And in this way, we have problems because we are leaving unnoticed the potential existence of inequality in terms of quality family support. That is really a problem because we do not know what is going on in different countries, and so we do not have a clear idea of how these inequalities in family support are really happening. And in this way, it is important to examine, that is the main goal of our survey, to fill this gap and to know to what extent the adoption of EBP is taking place in support provision system in Europe. So we are quite ambitious on that. That is a preliminary survey, of course. It has to be followed for more documentary information and many other things, but that was, I think, one of the first works done in this direction. And so it is important to clarify from the very beginning that we are tackling with a high complexity and diversity system in the provision of family support. And you can see that this kind of complexity and diversity comes from different sources. We just present 3 of these main sources of differences, because we have at the national, regional, and local family policies that can differ from one country to the other. That is one main source, but we have also another main source that depends on the combination of public, private, and NGO services, social entities in general. And you know that each country combines in different way all this system. That can be another source of complexity and diversity. And the third source is also very, very important because we are tackling different target populations. In some countries, they follow a universal progressionism that involves going to the wider family support in a universal stand, and then providing extra efforts as soon as we are getting into more complexity needs. But some others are more confined at a selective level of just going directly to those families who have in high complexity needs. And so they go directly from universal to selective to even to indicated cases in which there are high amount of problems in the family. So that is a real source of diversity that exists. And also we have a lot of diversity in terms of modality of delivery. We are aware that we have individual approaches, we have group-based approaches, we have home-based, we have online, hybrid systems, and that has to be taken into account and to see how are they efficient, this system. But also we have different types of interventions and evaluations because of the culture of the professionals also differ a lot. Differ a lot also because they come from different sectors. They can come from social, from education, from health, from community, also justice. So we are dealing with a workforce with high level of interdisciplinarity. And all of them come with different culture, with different traditions in how to intervene, how to evaluate. And we have to put them together somehow and to work in a collaborative way, as we will say. Well, in the end, what we need is systemic transformation. Look at this big and ambitious goal. Systemic transformation that should take place at national, regional, and local levels to guarantee the adoption of EBP. So it's not a matter of just giving courses to the professionals, just telling what they should do, but because you have to go into the skin, under the skin of the country, and to produce a sort of systemic transformation. It is also important to take into account that we need strategies for the adoption of EBP, because it is good to have this goal, this general goal of systemic transformation, but we need to go into the details of the strategies, implementation strategies. So that means to go into the operational side, how to make it, how to progress on that. And in this sense, we have to first build a sort of leadership at the national level. Leadership that involves a collaborative schema between many actors. For instance, clear-cut policy makers, researchers, practitioners, but also stakeholders. I mean, there are a lot of actors that should be put into coordination. And for instance, this has been done in Spain from 2009, trying to put together all this, not in a competitive way, not in a unidirectional way, but in a collaborative way. And I tell you that is really a great experience to reach this possibility. And that is critical, to put the system forwards towards these EBP adoptions. But also we need, and that is very important, we need to foster or to promote translational efforts. Translational efforts going from science to practice, but also from practice to science, because sometimes a good experience makes the researchers to think more about it and for instance, open a new line of inquiry on that. So it is good to have these bidirectional efforts from science to practices, leading to agreed EBP guidelines, of course, based on the quality standards that my colleagues has already mentioned. But that is good, that is very good to really get into the system, into the service system, and provide guidelines on how to organize the services or the social entities, how to provide the main guidelines for the functioning, for the goals, for the ethics that my colleagues has explained about. But also we need the standards about how to work with the families, how to interact with the families. Are they just following our expertise, our expert guidance, or are we looking for another type of interaction, more bilateral again, or more based on alliance and collaboration? And also we have a standard on EBP, of course, EBP programs. You hear about, there is a lot of quality standards on that. So we are not beginners on this matter. But we need, and this is very important, to get an official recognition. Because if practitioners are working a lot in applying these standards and nobody said, well, you are doing well, in fact, you deserve this kind of praise or recognizing because of that, then the efforts remain unnoticed. And many people get burned because they do the efforts and nobody recognizes this effort. And that is terrible. But because we have to work multi-agency and also in a cross-sectoral settings, as I said before. So we need to motivate. We need to motivate and also to coordinate the improvements of the different sectors. So it has to be orchestrated at the highest level. But we also need, and that is another important aspect, to do a professional training. That is very important, but a professional training also with an inclusive evaluation of the quality of family support. And always it is very important to get the alliance with the families, to work and also to promote child and family participations. So this is not just to telling the family what they have to do and then following how to do it or how to make it. No, it's not the same. We have to, from the very beginning, from the very first steps of planning what to do, how to help this family, we have to work on that under this collaborative alliance. And then it is also very important, another part, which is the dissemination of the results among professionals, among family, among the society at large. And in this sense, it is very important to promote the accountability of the system. That is not clear. What are the results? How can we provide to the other professionals and to other services this information and information to the society at large? So if we put all these things together, what have been just telling, then we reach what we have done, that is a comparative study based on a model, on a working model, that tried to involve all these pieces I was just explaining right now. So we developed 18 questions that tackles the strategies I've just mentioned. But the interesting thing is that we tried to apply this strategy at the national agency and practitioners level, but going dynamically downwards and upwards, because the system has to be fed up not only from the national to the practitioners, but also in the other way around. And then we can come up with an overview of the quality assurance current system, quality assurance in the countries, in the different countries. Well, we use a formative protocol based on self-directed assessment with the 20 European countries I just mentioned. And why it is a formative protocol? Because we do not like to produce just a ranking. We do want that the countries reflect on that and to find and identify ways of improvement. We think that that is very important. And that is why we had this formative protocol. And these are the members. The members are quite well, the participants. The participants are quite well distributed, geographically distributed, but also they have different political status. Because we have EU members, as you may see, a great variety of them. We have EU candidates, and that is very important because these countries seldom appear in the comparative studies, and we should take them into account because they are in the waiting list to be in the future members of the European Union. And of course, we have non-EU members. Now we have the United Kingdom and Israel. And also it is important to take into account that we use consensual responses. Not individual responses, but consensual responses given by members of the EURFAMNet national supporting networks that we created on the spot thanks to the project. But also sometimes we ask members for high coordination agencies already existent in the country, and all of them gave a sort of consensual responses. So you can trust that they are responses that do not belong just to an individual point of view. And that is important for our safety. The next slide presents the results. Well, of course, in a Sumerian way, but I think it is important to remember that our results are organized in terms of profile of responses that we present in a progression towards EBP adoptions. So if we say initial, that means initial steps, medium, and advanced, and we put it like this. And in the initial step is very important because we are very happy because of these results, because you see that the majority of responses are really using and establishing legal and policy national frameworks, even also the candidate countries, on child rights, protections against violence, and family support, and many other things. So you see that the foundations are somehow laid on getting on this EBP agenda. But we have also, that is also nice to have international recommendations endorsed on child rights and family support. Look at the high percentage of responses. And also we got international, national, local NGOs, and also national and regional services. That is very good news, but is this enough for getting into the EBP agenda? I'm afraid it's not enough. And so we got into the medium level, in which we have the appearance of local services and as proximity services that are very helpful for the family. That appears in these median results. By the way, look at the percentage. The percentage are moderate. It goes down. But we have important achievements in terms of practically all the strategies I've just mentioned, because we have stable bilateral collaboration. That is good. We do not have all the actors I mentioned before, but at least bilateral collaborations. We have an acknowledgement of EBP guidelines, so there is a sort of consensual guidelines. We have the recognition of EBP use of services, at least at the level of services. So there is a recognition that these practitioners or these services are using these EBP guidelines. We have the professional training in EBP, and we have the cross-sectoral partial adoption. But that is great because it's adoptions, partial, of course, but at least they are trying to follow the same guidelines. And then we got into the last profile of responses. Again, there is a critical reduction on that, but still we have a stable trilateral collaboration. The first time that appears, that stable trilateral collaboration, we have the EBP guidelines fully adopted, not just acknowledged, but adopted. We have the recognition of EBP at the professional teams. That is very good because it means that the system permeate into the practitioners level, but also the cross-sectoral fully adoption of EBP. That is, it's very nice. Of course, you see the reduction in the percentage of responses, and so we have formal EBP professional exchanges on this matter precisely, and that is also a very good result. But what about the countries? Because we have profile of responses, but how to work out with the countries. So what we did was follow just the same progressions I just mentioned, but we assign the countries to each one level, but according to the profile of responses I've just mentioned now. So at this initial level, we have, and that is good, all the candidate countries are here, with the exception of France. I will tell you because that was something that say, wow, what is this? Because, France is a member. But we have all the candidate countries. What does it mean? It means that they have, like the others, they have all laid the foundations for the EBP adoptions, but still this agenda is in the very, very preliminary steps. So it is there, of course, but in a very preliminary way. But what about the medium level? Well, in the medium level, we have the members. We have practically, not all, but all the members are there, with the exception of Israel. And remember that in this medium level, these countries are really implementing the strategies I mentioned before. Of course, in a moderate way, but just on the agenda, clearly. And then we go to the third, to the advanced group, that means further in the progression of EDP, but timidly, I would say, because of the percentage. And we have all these countries, of course, members of the European Union, and also UK, a former member, and of course, probably taking the lead because they had this EBP agenda many years ago. But we have there. But we have to say something that helps you to interpret clearly these results. I hope so. Because we have a great variability in many other criteria that we are not using here. To see that we are confined to this criteria of EBP adoptions, but there are other criteria. I put it other examples that are also very nice. But then the alignments can change. So probably the alignments are not the same as this. Let's put the example of the great variability in public spending on family benefits. For sure that you are aware that France in the first group, but also Sweden in the second group, are in the top of the ranking of investment for family benefits, at the very top. Whereas, for instance, Spain, because I come from Spain, I want to tell our examples, are exactly at the lower part of the list. It's a shame, but we have to recognize, especially in cash investment, not so in in-kind investment, but in cash investment. It is a shame because we are doing our work, but we have still very low in the investment. So the alignments seems to be in a different directions than the alignment of EBP adoptions. So there are independent criteria that also can be different. So they can differ in the other cases of criteria. In some other cases, it is probably that it's okay, it's following the same line. But the processes are different, as you may understand. So they should be treated in principle, being skeptical of the way they will go. And so we have to, I just have to finish with this explanation that I think is very important. It has to do with the word evidence ecology. This notion came from the World Health Organization in 2021. I like these notions because this means that there is a need for the whole ecosystem to change in the following sense: to produce evidence, to transfer evidence, but also to apply evidence to the practical settings. So it's not enough. So we have to go into the practical settings to really fully implement the whole thing. And I like this because at the end it's a healthcare system and it's going, I think, it's going, well, far away from us. They are more on the EBP agenda, but still they need this ecosystem. And this is the same in the case of the quality family support. We need an ecosystem. And so we need, sorry, that I have to find a way. We need, of course, we need to raise the awareness for a sort of cultural readiness to open our system into this EBP agenda. This is the first thing to make, the cultural readiness of the countries involving, of course, involving the system, the provision system, involving all of this. But I like the idea of cultural because it is something related to the culture, something that makes the professionals really aware of the importance of that and also making the families to be aware of the importance of the quality. And that is the second part, I would say, engage stakeholders on this kind of advocacy for quality services. And that is very important to ensure the participation of children and families in the process. For instance, one thing that we have to add in our survey, next time we work on that, we have to include the level of children and family participation into this. I think it's really critical. As you may notice, we do not have this item on that. But we are just planning to of course, to improve our survey. Also, we have to disseminate EVP guidelines, and that is very important, cross-sectorially. And it is still in its infancy. Somehow we need more on that. And also that would be important to facilitate the collaborative work in the child and family support. And we need, and I would underline the word interprofessional training, because we work with our own disciplines in our mind, and then it's difficult for us to collaborate because we follow different frameworks, different training. And so we need to really to prepare, and that also a kind of things that we are doing in the Eurofine Net in another section. We have to work with this workforce that has to work in accordance with competency standards, that we are starting to establish these competency standards. Which are the capabilities? Are they regulated? We are talking about interprofessional training. It has to be done. And then ensure the sustainability of the quality assurance system in times of economical crisis. Europe knows a lot about that. In times of health crisis, and to have them sustainably working as a guarantee to child and family well-being. And finally, to promote recommendations at the European level. Not just getting the main idea of having this EVP for investment, for policy decision making. That's great. I mean, that's great principle for that. But we have to help a little bit more the countries to be more concrete and help them in strengthen this quality family support, because we have at risk to have inequalities on that. And then our child and social rights may suffer from that. So we hope that all these things can be done in the near future. And for sure, we will work, I can tell you, intensively on that. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank our presenters for the impressive presentations they've been giving. And now we have time for questions and discussion. Just to say, fortunately, Mr. Geuking was able to stay. So if you have questions for Mr. Geuking, he's also there to answer them for you. So on anybody, what questions do you have for our panel? Aya?
Push the button.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. All these technical things. Thank you very much, first of all, for your great presentations. I understand that you have researched really very in-depth the support systems that are there over a period of 4 years. Have you seen during that period significant changes? Or would you say that what you found in the beginning continues or gets even less? Or do you see improvements? Thank you.
Well, I'm quite optimistic by nature. And so this is why I work in this field, that you have to be optimistic and foresee the good things that may come. But I think I'm quite realistic in saying that we are really surprised by the way candidate countries, for instance, are just already on the agenda of course, in the very beginning, because they have to do a lot of work to enter into the European Union. But in fact, they are quite aligned on that. So they never said, oh, that's not on that. I mean, we do not go like this. So they are on the way. So that is our future, our next future. But in the own countries, so the countries have made the homework. But we need probably to combine them and to create more learning, collaborative learning scenarios for learn from each other. Because it's not a matter of ranking. I hate the ranking because the ranking is a rigid way to look at the things, and it's look at in a competitive way, and it's not the case. So we should be in a different mood of helping each other in a collaborative scenario to see how you are doing like this, because the pattern of progress is quite understandable for all of them. Even if they say, no, I don't have this, but they recognize the importance. They never say, no, that's not for me at all. So they are in the way, and we can foresee a scenario, a richer scenario of collaborative exchanges in helping each other on that. And this is a future project that we are going to apply just not to finish here. Now that we have the data, we need to know more and to get into the parents' minds and to get more into the documentary details, to get more into more external evaluation. But I do not dismiss the importance of this self-reflection, because it gives us a mature idea of where they are and where they want to be. And that is enough for me.
I wanted to ask who, we saw the participants from different countries. Who from those countries is the participant? Is it the state institution or?
So the way we operate in the EuroFabNet, we have what we call a double layer structure, as Professor Canavan introduced. So we have representatives from countries. In most of cases, we are academics, but we are academics that are working in the applied field of family support. So what we do is that we build national working groups, and there is variability depending on the country, because depends on all that variability what we're presenting. But what I can tell you is that it's cross-sectional. So we have, for example, frontline practitioners or practitioners that come from entities. Also the third sector is represented. Also the public services are there. I don't know if I'm missing something to consider in that regard.
No, I mean, I think one of the groups that I should have mentioned was we have a policy and practice stakeholders group as well within the action, which also connects us back into the national levels in terms of the participants. So if I understand your question is who's responding to these questions, I suppose. The people that are in the cost action, the members of the cost action, but in consultation with national networks in some cases. In my own case, a few of us at national level who would be very experienced in the Irish case and understand the Irish provision landscape really, really deeply, do you know? So it's probably an expert response is what I would say.
I was also thinking, is it still possible to join?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please. And I take that glove, as we would say in Spanish, to maybe refer to the continuation that Professor Rodrigo was referring, because the challenge is how to move forward. And for sure we have a lot of room for progressing, but how do we go to the front line at the end? So we want to strengthen the national working groups, those supportive groups, because we think that's as Professor has introduced, that's the way to make real change. So just please join us. Thank you for suggesting.
Gentleman over there.
Yes, good morning. Claudio from Milano, Italy. I'm a member of the European Parent Association. First of all, I want to really thank you, Mr. Geuking, for your opening speech. which I could not agree more. And especially when you mentioned that the lower number of children in Europe is creating a drama for Europe, for our future. We will be losing countries compared to the other countries in the world if we will not start again to having more children. Sorry. So having said that, I really think that the approach, as you said, many people say many words, but then nothing happens, and especially at European Parliament, which is the same at Italian Parliament, which is exactly the same. And I think that is because one of the issues, at least from my perspective, is that the family is not perceived as a political institution. So the state institution are facing individuals and not family. We are going to vote as individuals. The family is not voting when it comes to the elections. And this, I think, it is not fair, because in a normal economical situation, when two agencies are providing services, they recognize each other and they handshake also economy. The family is not only a receiving provider, it's providing services which the state does not recognize. Because there is a huge amount of services that the family is providing within themselves and to the community, which are not economically valuated. And this is making the relationship between the family and the state unfair, because we are paying taxes, but we are not receiving back for the same amount of services that each family is providing. Sorry for the long introduction. Now the question is, do you think there is any space for the future, maybe not tomorrow morning, that our community, our European Parliament and ourselves, we start thinking to the family in terms of service provider and not only in service receiver? And so we start thinking in the totally opposite way, when we should recognize the service provided by the family to the community, and started thinking, oh my God, what is the value of this? What is the value of a family keeping old people in home instead of going to the hospital, or other things that you know much better than I? And so would this not change the paradigm between the relationship between a family and the politicians? Do you think that there is any space, or this is just a dream? Thank you.
Ja, also Sie sprechen mir natürlich aus der Seele. Als, wie ich schon gesagt habe, Bundesvorsitzender der Familienpartei Deutschlands. Ich erwähne es nochmal, wir haben zum Beispiel bei uns im Programm die Forderung stehen, dass Familien ein spezielles Wahlrecht zukommt, dass wir ein Familienwahlrecht bekommen. Wobei wir hier untereinander natürlich, gibt verschiedene Szenarien, da haben wir uns nicht festgelegt, wie auch immer das dann mit Leben gefüllt wird. Ob man für jedes Kind eine Ersatzstimme abgeben kann als Eltern, oder ob man sagt, nein, Familien haben grundsätzlich die Gewichtung auf 1,5 oder 2 Stimmen, damit Familie hier ein Wahlrecht bekommt und das Wort der Familien entsprechend mehr berücksichtigt wird und bei der Wahl. Und dann ist es nicht mehr so einfach, nur Versprechungen zu machen, denn dann haben es die Familien in der Hand zu wählen. Allerdings kann ich Ihnen heute schon sagen, leider ist es zumindest in Deutschland so, dass die Familien heute nicht mal von ihrem Wahlrecht Gebrauch machen. Viele Familien bleiben zu Hause, die sind resigniert, sie wollen nicht mehr. Sie fühlen sich betrogen, von der Gesellschaft verraten. Und sie haben ganz andere alltägliche Probleme, die sie immer mehr einengt in ihre Bewegungsfreiheit und in ihr selbstbestimmtes Leben. Und daher gehen viele gar nicht erst zur Wahl. Denn anders ist es nicht erklärlich, dass hier die Familienpartei Deutschlands aus Deutschland heraus nicht mindestens 20 Sitze hat. Das ist nur dadurch erklärlich, dass die Leute zu Hause bleiben, resigniert sind, weil sie den Politikern einfach nicht mehr glauben. Und sie glauben gar nicht, wie schwierig es für mich ist, am Stand, ich rede jetzt von Deutschland, am Stand in Deutschland zu stehen und versuchen, den Menschen nahezubringen, Mensch, beteiligt euch aktiv an die Politik. Und immer wieder höre ich, ach, die Politiker, ihr lügt ja sowieso alle. Nee, nicht ihr lügt alle, sondern die Altparteien haben gelogen entsprechend. Aber uns wird es dann auf die Fahnen geschrieben und dann verweigert man sich den Wahlen. Und dann haben wir halt solche Konstellationen, die nicht den Wählerwillen widerspiegeln. Wenn man alle Wahlberechtigten in Deutschland nimmt, zum Beispiel nehmen wir jetzt die Bundesregierung, es sind ja nicht mal 25% oder nicht mal 20% der Wahlberechtigten in Deutschland, wenn man die zusammenzieht, wenn alle zur Wahl gegangen wären, hätten die ja nicht mal 20% der Stimmen bekommen. Und die bilden die Regierung mit Mehrheiten. So verschiebt sich das. Das heißt, ich will darauf betonen, die Familien haben es auch mit in der Hand. Sie müssen zur Wahl gehen, sie müssen ihre Stimme abgeben. Und in jedem Land gibt es Parteien, da bin ich mir ganz sicher, in jedem Land gibt es Parteien, die die Familie wirklich vertreten und auch entsprechend in ihren Wahlprogrammen berücksichtigen und die es ehrlich meinen. Und das sind nicht die altbekannten Parteien, das sind meist dynamische, junge, neue Parteien. Und was mich hoffnungsvoll stimmt in ganz Europa, das ist dass sich die Jugend jetzt wieder ein bisschen mehr für Politik interessiert. Wir erleben es in Deutschland, die sogenannten Klimakleber, die sich überall festkleben. Das wünschte ich mir manchmal auch für die Familien, nicht nur fürs Klima, sondern dass sich die jungen Menschen auch sagen, ja, wir wollen Familie haben, denn es gibt Umfragen, wo über 90% der befragten Jugendlichen zwischen 15 und 25 Jahren, 90%, jedes Jahr sagen, was wünscht ihr euch für die Zukunft? An erster Stelle steht immer Familie und ein eigenes Haus. Das sind immer die Antworten der Jugendlichen, und das schon seit Jahrzehnten. Die Zahlen variieren zwischen 91 und 98%. Das ist unwahrscheinlich viel. Und da fragt man sich natürlich, warum vergessen die Menschen das dann wieder, wenn sie in einem wahlfähigen Alter sind und geben dann nicht die Stimme an den Parteien, die auch die Familien stärken. Und das ist die Krux bei der Geschichte. Und da komme ich jetzt auch auf die Frage, auf die erste Frage, die gestellt worden ist, möchte ich noch mal ganz kurz, denn eins greift ja ins andere. Es ist zum Glück, dank dieser ganzen Studien, ist es zum Glück mittlerweile so weit, dass wir die Problematiken der Familien aus dem Schattendasein herausbringen und sie ins Licht stellen können, sodass die sichtbar werden. Das war früher ja auch nicht so. Das ist schon mal ein großer Verdienst der Studien. Und das hat sich mit Sicherheit vieles gebessert in der Richtung. Dass die Länder auch auskunftsfreudiger geworden sind und ehrlicher sind mit den Daten, das hat sich gebessert. Aber wie die Frau Professorin schon richtig gesagt hat, es fehlt die Partizipation der Kinder und Familien an den Gesamtergebnissen, die hier zusammengetragen ist in dieser Datenflut. Das fehlt. Und das ist der nächste Schritt, den wir dringend eingehen müssen. Sowohl die Politik ist hier gefordert, aber auch Sie alle sind gefordert. Seien Sie Multiplikatoren und bringen Sie zumindest in Ihrem Bekanntenkreis die Problematiken der Familien Europas näher. Und erklären Sie, warum es so wichtig ist, Familien zu stärken. Denn nur aus starken Familien heraus kann auch ein starkes Europa entstehen, was dann in der globalen Welt sich behaupten kann. Und das geht nur durch starke Familien. Und das müssen wir transportieren und das müssen wir in die Köpfe hereinbringen. Und wenn ich dann höre, dass es Politiker gibt hier im Europäischen Parlament, ganz weit verbreitet, die sagen, Familien können gar nicht mit Geld umgehen. Die glauben gar nicht, was ich mir anhören musste. Wir wollten ja ursprünglich 50 € je Kind in Europa haben, Kinderkostengeld. Wir haben es dann reduziert auf 25, weil das Argument, das Totschlagargument kommt immer, Familien können gar nicht mit Geld umgehen. Wir stärken Institutionen, die Familien unterstützen, ja, aber die Familien selber finanziell unterstützen, geht gar nicht. Das ist das Argument, was Sie immer anführen. Da gibt es aber auch deutliche Untersuchungen, die sagen, das ist Lüge. Das ist einfach eine Schutzbehauptung, das stimmt schlichtweg nicht. Natürlich können Familien mit Geld umgehen, genauso wie Sie, ich und jeder andere auch. Und natürlich benötigen die Familien das Geld. Das ist einfach nur eine Schutzbehauptung und das ist unwahr. Und das wurde belegt mit hinreichenden Untersuchungen, mit hinreichenden Umfragen auch. Das heißt, durch solche Datenerhebungen, die wir hier haben, entziehen wir auch den Leuten, die akribisch darauf bedacht sind, die Familienbilder zu zerstören, denn die gibt es durchaus in unserer Gesellschaft, denen entziehen wir auch immer mehr die Argumente, dank dieser Datenerhebungen. Das muss man auch so deutlich sagen. Insofern tut sich da sehr, sehr viel und es schreitet weiter voran, keine Frage. Jetzt geht es darum, wie können wir die Familien und die Kinder partizipieren lassen an unseren Erkenntnissen und wie kriegen wir gesamtgesellschaftspolitisch gesehen in ganz Europa, dass Familien spezieller gefördert werden und dass Familien entsprechend auch ein selbstbestimmtes Leben, und das hat nun mal auch mit Geld zu tun, ein selbstbestimmtes Leben führen können. Und das ist ohne Geld nicht möglich. Es sind Getriebene. Wie ich vor Eingang schon gesagt habe, am 15. des Monats, der Hälfte des Monats ist bei den meisten Familien kein Geld mehr da in Europa. Das muss man so sehen. Und dann geht es nur noch ums nackte Überleben, bis das erste Gehalt wieder fließt. Das sind dann Getriebene. Da kann man nicht von einem selbstbestimmten Leben reden. Und das ist unsere gesamtgesellschaftliche Aufgabe und es ist auch unsere Partei ist auch eine christliche Partei. Und ich sage hier nochmal ganz deutlich, es ist auch unsere christliche Pflicht, hier endlich die Familien zu stärken und aus dieser Armutsfalle herauszuholen und herauszuführen. Und deswegen bin ich da Überzeugungstäter. Ja, ich hoffe, dass ich das soweit Frage 1 und 2 beantworten konnte und danke für Ihre freundlichen Worte.
I'm Agatha Daddato, Head of Programs at Eurochild. I was wondering about the EuroFamNet. Have you given any thoughts actually on the use of information and dissemination technology, information communication technology to deliver parenting and support services to families? And if so, have you come up with any guiding principles that can actually support decision-making in this field, in this respect?
Thank you for the question, if I may reply, because this is something that came during the pandemic and is about to stay. And we have a group of colleges that are working on that regard, but in terms from the research process, there is much way still to do. So the work that has been done so far is first understanding what's going on and what are the strategies that are going on. And the idea is that a group still keep working in terms of providing guidelines and best practices, but we are not still there. And I know that Maria Jose is in the group that is working on that, so I don't know if you have more details, but I think that's the situation, yes. So hopefully we will address that, yes.
On that point, we're academics, a lot of us, so we will have a special issue of a journal and we hope to make it open access in the next few months, and there will be a paper looking at which I think more or less validates that there is effectiveness in these programs on an online basis, which is really good news in terms of some of the cost implications and the accessibility, accepting issues of digital divide and so on that exist. Christopher, could I just maybe come back on another point that was just been raised by our question and our colleague from the Parliament? Just to highlight, and again, we started this action and the network and the action really starting with a children's rights perspective. So it's really, really important that we emphasize that. And we also emphasize the idea of diversity in families. And that's all types of families. So we have a very open agenda in terms of our understanding as families. We don't have a particular type of family. And I think point was well made. It isn't this particular, two children, everything is harmonious and so on. So that's really, really important to highlight. And also to recognize that family can also be, if you want to have the nuclear family idea, it can also be sometimes unsafe for children. And that is really, really important that we acknowledge these points. But it still doesn't take away from the bottom line reality that it is family, as the points have been made, that provide these services, that provide care. COVID has told us 100% that this is the case. So it really is an interesting question as to why doesn't family feature in this sort of a way in conversations at European Parliament level and so on. So just to thank the colleagues for these interesting points.
Joanna.
Yes, I would like to, as a part of this Make Mothers Matter, as a part of this Eurofam network program and process, I would just like to give everybody today something to take home, to maybe to link with Mrs. Geuking's ask for participation of families. Today we heard, and just John mentioned that again, is that children have a right to family support. It's a right. It's not discretional. And that, I think, is the starting point for all families to start asking for this at the local, national, European level, because it's a right. It's not discretionary. So the states cannot say, we don't give you, we support you when we have the means, this is too expensive. So I think if we could take something home today, is this is a right of the child. Family support is a right of the child, and we have, as a society, as politicians, as NGOs, as practitioners, we have to be ready to provide this to the children. Thank you.
Sofort, ich wollte nur ganz kurz einwerfen, es ist nicht nur das juristische Recht, sondern es ist ein Menschenrecht. Das muss man mal deutlich herausstellen. Es ist ein Menschenrecht. Ne?
Thank you for that. That's very important. And probably something that it's just reacting what you are saying and also linking with the previous reflection is that even children are the targets. The way to address children go through the family. So if we develop policy that are regulations that are only focused on the children, not considering what evidence has tell us that children grow up in families and that there is a ecological, a systemic perspective that explains what's going on. So support has to go to families because children are not raising alone by themselves. And that's something probably that has been missing during the last, I don't know, from 10 years maybe, that the focus on children maybe has prevented us to recognize something that has been so clearly established in evidence, that there is not a conflict between both, but it's the vehicle to get those children rights, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have two questions, and it is from the Child Press reporters. First question is, do you have an example where the children themselves have been able to see the results of your work? The second question is, have you been working on family support in Holland? I'm sure you know we have had a toeslagenaffaire where 26,000 parents and 70,000 children have been very unheard by a terrible affair where the funding to the families was disrupted by the government. And still, children are shamed. So some of them are reporters, but I can't get them out to speak up. Of course, they have the children's right to have access to relevant information. So I'm very thankful for the quality of learning for well-being, that they have arranged this so that I can transfer this knowledge about your organization to the children directly. But it would be very needed in Holland anyway, but maybe you have an example in another country, because I haven't seen your organization into this affair yet. But maybe it's my misunderstanding.
Thank you for the question. And this is, as I think it's clear from the table, that it's a challenge that we are addressing, and because it requires a cultural change for everyone to include those voices. And what we are doing now is we are working from arts-based methods. So what we are trying to do is translate what we are doing, the messages we have, not only in terms of dissemination, but also in terms of this iterative dialogue, so to get insights about how this looks like for families and children. And we had a pilot experience in Spain so far, and we are moving forward on Croatia and UK. We don't have planned any experience for this period in Netherlands, but we will be happy to move forward on that regard. We have colleges there and open for suggestions. And the idea is how can we, what we are trying to do is use what evidence is saying about other methods to work with families and children, and using those methods that have served in the past to give a voice to what we could say vulnerable population. In this case, we are using the storytelling framework. That is a framework that is quite visual and is quite narrative and is also qualitative, so it means that you can include the voices of children and families. We have planned an event in July, 4th July in Madrid, in Spain, that this will be our final event as an action, not as a network, because we will keep working, and we want to present the information there for sure once it's available It will be on our website because we are progressing on that regard. But to be fair, that I could say that we have not approached fully systematically. Yeah. So that's part of our challenge for the next period. But we have some experiences that we are trying to develop. And please.
Just to say, we're presenting this afternoon as well for the European Parents Association, and we will cover some of this. And one of our real agendas is to work much harder at the parent and children voice. Just to take a second to actually focus and to build a project that really commits to connecting policy and academic work is really difficult and slow and challenging. And even for us to have done as well as we have at European and national level is an achievement. But certainly we do want to achieve significantly more in terms of the direct voices. But we have our policy and practice group, Christopher's organisation and other organisations, which really allow us to reflect in as much as we can children and young people's voices and parents, but we want to do an awful lot more.
Anybody got a very short question? Again?
It's not so much a question. Thank you very much for mentioning the event this afternoon of the European Parents Association. So for everybody who would be interested, we will be reconvening in the Parliament this afternoon, and we will try to get more to the grassroots parents. That's what the European Parents Association is all about. And we are very happy, of course, about all the research and the findings. We will try to get that out to our parents as well so that they have a better stand on the political scene, whether it's on local, national, or last but not least on the European level. But we know the problem of getting people to vote. It's a constant battle that we are fighting all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Aya. Joanna,
there's still one question over there, just from Francesca.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm Francesca Pisano from Hope and Homes for Children, an NGO and at Ending Institutionalization for Children. It is very fascinating to hear about the survey and the fact that you would like to improve it by adding child participation as one of the indicators. Family separation and child institutionalization is also a sign that the child protection system is not working and the policies are not efficient. I wonder whether you are also planning to add the prevention to family separation and the prevention to institutionalization as one of the indicators.
Maria, yeah, I'll take that at a general point, first of all, if that's okay. So where the action emerged from was a meeting that was held with the support of Eurochild, the Council of Europe, the centre I worked for, and others. I can't remember if was there another partner, Agatha? I don't think so. And what happened at that was we brought people from all over Europe, including countries who were coming from a context of institutionalized care and the institutionalization aspect. So that the original motivation for the network, one of them is to respond to this exact point. So I think from the point of view of future surveys and really asking questions about that in the context of family support as a mechanism to prevent institutionalized care, it is very much on our agenda.
Well, thank you all very much. Joanna, do you just want to mention the follow-up now, quickly?
Yes, I would like
your microphone.
To join us, instead of the people online, to join us to our premises. So I would like to invite everybody to join us for the post-event to continue the discussion, to continue that on a live way our premises, Make Mothers Matter. For all of you who are in person, of course, I propose that we go together like that because it is a little bit of a way, but you are more than welcome to join us. And Wellbeing Alliance is also part of the co-hosting event. Yeah. So stay here and join us, and we go together.
So to
Ja, ich möchte noch ganz kurz was anfügen, und zwar von der Fragestellung eben wegen Trennungseltern. Ja, also wegen der Fragestellung wegen Trennungseltern. Also es sind ja oftmals verschiedene Kriterien, die diese Situation für die Kinder in den Familien bei Trennungseltern enorm belasten. Das sind einmal die persönlichen Befindlichkeiten, die gestört sind. Man ist zutiefst verletzt bei einer Trennung. Und auf der anderen Seite ist es aber auch das liebe Geld häufig. Ein Faktor, das liebe Geld, wollen wir herausnehmen politisch, indem wir ein Erziehungsgehalt fordern. Und wir werden auch bei der nächsten Europawahl mit dieser Forderung eines Erziehungsgehalts, europaweites Erziehungsgehalt, an den Markt gehen. Und ich sage Ihnen, das ist genau berechnet. Das Kinderkostengeld zum Beispiel, das ich vorhin sagte, haben wir genau berechnet, dass sich das zwischen 5 und 7 Jahren komplett amortisiert hätte und nach 7 Jahren man sogar in die Gewinnzone fährt, weil es eigentlich ein Wirtschaftsprogramm ist, weil es die Wirtschaft in den jeweiligen Ländern ankurbelt, weil die Familien das Geld brauchen, sie geben es aus und es geht in den Wirtschaftskreislauf rein. Da gibt es ganz klare Berechnungen, die wir angelegt haben. Deswegen ist es hier auch unerklärlich, warum sich hier 324, 25 unverantwortliche Politiker enthalten haben bei der Einführung. Das dazu. Bei der Erziehungsgehalt würde bedeuten, wir fordern für Deutschland zum Beispiel 1.800 € versicherungspflichtiges Erziehungsgehalt. Und auch das würde sich in wenigen Jahren amortisieren, weil es würde nämlich ein selbstbestimmtes Leben der Familien sichern und eines greift ins andere. Wir möchten dann natürlich die ganze Kinderbetreuung, Kita und so weiter freigeben dem Markt, dass man das nicht so reglementiert, sondern in Deutschland haben wir das zum Beispiel bei Tagespflege für Senioren gemacht. Da haben wir es freigegeben. Natürlich gibt es eine Heimaufsicht, die alles überprüft und muss Standards wahren, überhaupt keine Frage. Aber sie können selbstbestimmt eine Tagespflege anbieten. Und so möchten wir es auch bei der Kinderbetreuung haben. Da würde so viel Kreativität freisetzen, dann wird es den Betreuer geben, den Betreuungsopa, die Betreuungsoma, die Tagesmutter, die was auch immer, was es da auf dem Markt alles geben wird. Und dann können sich die Familien selber von ihrem Erziehungsgehalt ihre Leistungen zukaufen, um Familie und Beruf in Einklang zu bringen oder halt nicht. Das muss jeder selbst entscheiden. Die Menschen sollen ein selbstbestimmtes Leben führen. Und deswegen werden wir mit dem Erziehungsgehalt herangehen. Und dann hat sich nämlich bei Trennungseltern, deswegen komme ich darauf, diese Problematik zumindest, es geht ums Geld, das hat sich dann nämlich erledigt. Weil sie brauchen dann in dem Sinne auch keinen Unterhalt zu bezahlen, denn der Erziehungspflichtige oder die Erziehungspflichtige, je nachdem, wer das Kind dann entsprechend weiter betreut, wird entsprechend dann von dem Erziehungsgehalt ohne Probleme leben können. Das heißt, wir haben die Brisanz des Geldes schon mal herausgenommen, sodass die Kinder hier nicht zwischen den Stühlen geraten und in einen Streit geraten, nur wegen den finanziellen Mitteln, wie es bei den Trennungseltern oftmals ja der Fall ist. Also eines greift ins andere. Man muss das alles im Gesamtkontext sehen. Und deswegen bin ich auch dankbar für solche Veranstaltungen heute und dankbar, dass Sie hier sind. Und wie Sie schon sagte, auch die Folgeveranstaltung enorm wichtig und nehmen Sie vieles mit nach Hause. Und eines möchte ich noch sagen, wir haben hier draufstehen, um eine effektive Arbeitsgruppe zu bilden und ein Gefühl dafür zu bekommen, wie es weitergeht. Das ist eine Sache für heute. Und da möchte ich ganz gerne vorschlagen, und das möchte ich Ihnen überlassen, dass Sie eine Arbeitsgruppe bilden aus 3, 4, 5 Leuten. Und wie ich eingangs gesagt habe, wir haben ein Pilotprojekt, das kam gestern erst rein. Und das geht immer ganz kurzfristig und ganz schnell. Das heißt, bis Ende dieses Monats muss es stehen. Ein Pilotprojekt heißt, wir können Gelder beantragen, Mittel beantragen für ein Pilotprojekt. Die Voraussetzung ist, es darf es noch nicht in Europa gegeben haben und es muss neu sein, innovativ sein. Und da würde ich Sie bitten, die Arbeitsgruppe da was zu erarbeiten. Ich würde es dann einreichen. Die Frist ist allerdings schon am 31.03. aus. Wobei die sich verpflichtet haben, bis Juni schon zu entscheiden, wer von den Vorschlägen unterstützt wird finanziell. Egal was es ist, egal welches Pilotprojekt. Ich hatte angedacht, vorgearbeitet gestern, das schneller als schon reinkam, was ich heute erkennen musste, was wir viele schon in Studien abgehandelt haben. Ich hatte zum Beispiel anamnestische Erhebung zwischen Traditionen, Kulturen in den verschiedenen Ländern der Familien und so weiter, dass wir da Forschungsgelder freisetzen, um das zu erforschen und das abzugleichen. Das ist aber schon in diesen Studien weitestgehend enthalten. Also sind die Kriterien gar nicht mehr erfüllt. Ich würde mir wünschen, dass wir heute hier eine Arbeitsgruppe machen und dass die Arbeitsgruppe hier ein Pilotprojekt erarbeitet und mir das rechtzeitig zukommen lässt. so dass ich es vernünftig in Form kleiden kann und dann würde ich es einreichen, fristgerecht bis 31.03. und dann hoffentlich durchsetzen können, sodass das ein ganz wichtiger Schritt wäre zur Stärkung der Familien, was auch immer die Arbeitsgruppe hier für ein Pilotprojekt macht. Ich würde, wenn Sie mir, oder ich würde Frau Piccolo, Ihre Mailadresse habe ich maile Ihnen die Kriterien für dieses Pilotprojekt zu, dass Sie wissen, wie, was, wo genau berücksichtigt werden muss und was man da quasi alles mitmachen kann. Ja, und dann wäre das ein, finde ich, wunderbares Ergebnis des heutigen Vormittags, wenn wir diese Arbeitsgruppe hinbekommen, aus wenigen Leuten, nicht zu viel, und dass wir hier vielleicht ein Pilotprojekt ins Leben rufen können, was wir ganz schnell realisieren könnten, zumindest bis im Sommer diesen Jahres. Okay?
With great pleasure, we will keep this opportunity, and thank you so much for this, actually, and I think we will be really glad to contribute into. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for finishing with this challenge to us. I think that's the way to do it, because if we heard earlier about political statements that don't end up in reality, it's civil society and NGOs that have to be the conscience of the political world. And I know now Eurofamnet faces that question. Where do you go beyond cost? And I just hope, from what we've heard today and all the great work you've done, that you can become a perpetual organization, whether it's a network or an NGO, that you're there to substantiate and work again, continue this work together so we can bring it up into the conscience of the politicians and society in general, because it is needed so much. So thank you very much for your presentations today. And Mr. Geuking for bringing a political context to the research and the work Eurofam have been doing. So we're over time, so thank you very much. There'll be more of these quality of childhood sessions in June, October and December, and we'll keep you informed on the themes, which are going to be very much to do with adversity, trauma and mental health. Those are the themes that we're going to take up over the coming months, and you're receiving invitations if you have in the